Wonderful. And with that, we'll begin. Thank you for joining everyone and welcome to today's event, a report from the West Bank with the Green Olive Collective, Roland Friedrich and Kamal Yousef. My name is Erez Bleicher and I'm the Advocacy and Membership Director of the Green Olive Collective, an advocacy, human rights, and tour guiding center committed to a democratic future and an end to the ongoing displacement of Palestinians. We provide communities around the world with insight into the apartheid policies of the occupation and the resources to engage in meaningful advocacy with Palestinians. Your contributions for today's event will support English, photography, and skateboarding classes for children currently displaced from Nur Shams and Tulkarm, along with community efforts to replant olive orchards after settler attacks and rebuild homes after demolitions in Masafer Yatta and the Nablus district. You can contribute through the Green Olive Fund at giftjustice.com, which I just put into the chat moments ago. This January, as no doubt many of you have followed and known, the Israeli military launched Operation Iron Wall, its largest military offensive in the West Bank since the Second Intifada. Since then, the Jenin, Tulkarm, Nur Shams, and Al-Farah refugee camps have been largely depopulated and 40,000 residents forcibly displaced. Today, we are joined by UNRWA Director of West Bank Affairs, Roland Friedrich, and resident of Nur Shams refugee camp, Kamal Yousef, to hear firsthand about the ongoing humanitarian catastrophe, the lived reality of community residents, the systematic destruction of infrastructure, and the imperative of an immediate political solution. UNRWA, the United Nations Relief and Works Agency for Palestine refugees in the Near East, was founded in 1950 to provide humanitarian relief and work programs to the 750,000 Palestinian refugees of 1948. Today, it provides services including emergency relief, healthcare, social services, camp infrastructure, and education to almost 6 million refugees in Jordan, Lebanon, Syria, Gaza, and the West Bank. The agency has played a singular role in the provision of humanitarian aid to generations of Palestinian refugees and is historically the largest humanitarian aid and emergency relief organization operating in Gaza and the West Bank. Unfortunately, UNRWA has been limited in its capacity to provide critical aid to Palestinians directly affected by Operation Iron Wall following an Israeli ban on UNRWA operations instituted this past January. UNRWA Director of West Bank Affairs, Roland Friedrich, is here with us today, and we're very grateful to him, and he will tell us more about the ban, humanitarian conditions in the West Bank, and UNRWA's ongoing work momentarily. Our second speaker today is Kamal Yousef, a community advocate, educator, and youth programs coordinator in Nur Shams refugee camp, who works with organizations providing interactive education for children with learning difficulties. In the last months, he has helped to coordinate skateboarding, photography, and English classes for children whose lives have been upended by recent military operations, and we're truly honored to have him here today to learn from him about past and present conditions in Nur Shams and on the ground. Kamal and Roland, your time here is sincerely appreciated, given all that is happening. The last thing I'll say before I pass to Roland to begin is that everyone from this moment on should please feel free to ask questions in the chat. Please send them in a direct message to me with the word question followed by a colon or dash afterwards so I can identify them, and hopefully we'll have the time and space to be an open conversation and have a Q&A at the end of our call today. So with that, thank you again, Roland, and I'll pass it to you.
No, thank you. This is really a great opportunity. I hope you can hear me okay. That's
Yes.
excellent. So let me perhaps, preface my presentation with a couple of remarks to frame, what is happening in the northern West Bank, in the broader, picture that we've been seeing in the West Bank since the 7th of October, since the Hamas terrorist attack, and since, the start of the war in Gaza. And I would say sort of also the war in the West Bank, because that is how the IDF sees it at the minute, as one of the theaters of war, although from an international law perspective, the legal framework applicable in the West Bank clearly is that of international human rights law. but I come to that later. So since the beginning of the war on the 7th of October, we've seen a massive deterioration of the situation in the West Bank on all fronts, economically, security-wise, in terms of the checkpoint system. We now have a situation with more than 700 checkpoints, barriers, a full closure of the West Bank. That has been in place since the 7th of October. In fact, we've actually seen an intensification of these movement restrictions since last December. We also see a massive socioeconomic downturn. We now have average unemployment rates across the West Bank of 40%. In some of the refugee camps where UNRWA works, up to 60%. And we also see unprecedented levels of settler violence. So just to say that what is happening in the Northern West Bank is not something that came out of nowhere, but it is really a further deterioration of an already bad situation that's, particularly kicked in with the start of the war. What I should also add is that UNRWA is, as Ered said, the biggest humanitarian/development provider in the West Bank. We run more than 90 schools, more than 40 health centers, provide cash assistance, humanitarian aid, social protection to more than 200,000 Palestinians. We run public services in 19 refugee camps. The overall number of beneficiaries is roughly 900,000. Out of those, roughly 250,000 reside in the camps. These are the poorest of the poor. And we also provide very generic services such as solid waste management and also microfinance. So it's a broad array of service provision that we do, akin to state-like services, and that makes UNRWA very different from other UN agencies. That's the mandate we've been given since the 50s. You will have seen that the Knesset in October last year adopted 2 laws against UNRWA. Both laws came into effect fully on the 29th of January. One law essentially bans the organization's work in what Israel considers its sovereign territory. That includes, in UNRWA's case, East Jerusalem, where we have our headquarters, where we operate 6 schools that were closed forcefully last week by the police, where we also operate 2 health centers and a vocational training facility. In the rest of the West Bank, UNRWA's activities according to those laws is not banned, but there is a no contact policy in place that allows us or prevents us from having any direct interaction with the Ministry of Foreign Affairs of Israel, with the Israeli military in the West Bank, or in fact with other, Israeli state entities. One result of that is that all international staff working in East Jerusalem had their visas stopped at the end of January. And the whole international team is currently working from the outside since the State of Israel would not let us come back in, which is, of course, a clear violation of international law and of the privileges and immunities of the United Nations. But that's unfortunately where we are at the moment. Having said that, the UNRWA's operations in the West Bank, we have roughly 4,500 staff, continue. In East Jerusalem, they also continue, minus our 6 schools there. We're very concerned that the Israeli government will take further measures to shut down also health centers in East Jerusalem. But again, as I said, the operations in the rest of the West Bank do continue. But we're facing an increasingly difficult environment. One challenge is, for example, our inability at the moment to directly coordinate humanitarian access, humanitarian issues, questions of protection directly with the Israeli military. We had a very extensive civil military coordination structure that has been frozen since the end of January because of that no contact policy. That makes our life on the ground more difficult. Perhaps that's an overview, just to preface a little bit where we are. I want to show you a little PowerPoint on the situation in the north. But let me emphasize here that what we're seeing is unprecedented. The situation in Northern West Bank is unprecedented. It's unprecedented because of the number of IDPs. We have now 40,000 people who still remain displaced, 3 refugee camps completely empty. That has never happened in the West Bank, not in the Second Intifada, and also, in fact, not since the occupation started in 1967. Secondly, we see systematic destruction of private and public infrastructure in these 3 camps, and I'm sure Kamal will have much more detail to add there. And thirdly, we have the stated intent by Israeli decision makers that the situation in the West Bank, in the northern West Bank, as it is now, is set to remain for an unknown period of time. And there's a stated intent so far not to let these IDPs return. And that creates, in addition to the humanitarian situation, of course, also political problems. These people want to return. It creates pressure on the Palestinian Authority. It creates unrest and also of course, security problems down the line. So just to say that this is not just a humanitarian problem. Of course, the people who are suffering are beneficiaries, and that's what we're primarily there for. But just to say it goes beyond the humanitarian situation. Let me quickly pull up a PowerPoint, and I hope you can see that. Okay, I'm not sure where we are here. It seems to be a bit of an issue. Bear with me a second, please.
Take your time.
Okay, I hope that works. Could you
We can
confirm?
see it now.
Okay. Great. So let me start perhaps by a bit of background there. So the current Operation Iron Wall started on the 21st of January in the Jenin refugee camp in the northern West Bank, and very quickly then expanded to the neighboring governorates of Tulkarm and Tubas, where it then focused on three other refugee camps, Tulkarm, Nur Shams, and Al-Fara. The stated aim of the operation was to defeat terrorism, including targeting Palestinian armed actors and terrorist infrastructure. What is important here that these three camps in particular, Tulkarm, Nur Shams, and Jenin, had already seen multiple multi-day Israeli search and arrest operations since the war started. That also involved destruction of infrastructure, a high number of fatalities, sometimes destruction of UN infrastructure. And in the case of Jenin, it came at the back of an almost 6 weeks Palestinian operation against armed actors in Jenin camp that also led to displacement. So the full picture here is that we have displacement from three camps. I come to that in a minute. But in the case of Jenin, there was also a Palestinian operation that led to some displacement immediately preceding this Operation Iron Wall. It's by far the single longest Israeli security force operation since the Second Intifada, and it involves extensive use of advanced weaponries, drones, tanks, in some cases helicopters, but it also involves the continued presence of the Israeli military in those camps. That is something that also, for many, let me try to pull it a little bit more up here. Let me see. Okay. All right. I think what makes this really, really horrible, if that's the term, is the systematic destruction of not only roads. We've seen that in the past, destruction of road networks through bulldozers in search of IEDs. But what we see now is the systematic destruction of private houses. Nobody has access to these camps at the moment. They're completely empty. But we have, from the preliminary figures that we've gathered so far, more than 200 houses destroyed in Jenin refugee camps since the beginning of the operation. It started with the simultaneous detonation of 23 houses in the camp on the 2nd of February. That then led to further impact on the infrastructure and was then followed by demolition orders with roughly 100 houses that were implemented in March, and then followed by demolition of houses at a lower level. There was a case made to the Supreme Court of Israel against the demolition orders, but the court saw it fit, the panel that was ruling on the case saw it fit to reject that petition, and the demolitions went ahead. What appears to be the aim of those demolitions is to cut sort of new roads through these camps and parcel up these camps into separate enclaves. And that is justified by military necessity, although that clearly is not the case. And I come to the legal assessment a little bit later. What is also concerning is the rhetoric. Various decision makers in Israel visited, for example, Tulkarm camp early in the year. Multiple statements have been released by the Israel security forces that the military would remain in these locations for a longer time. We've also seen for the first time at the end of February the actual deployment of tanks and armored personnel carriers in the northern West Bank. A lot of analysts in Israel and Palestine would say that the timing and the type of that operation at the end of January coincides with the beginning of the ceasefire in Gaza and would clearly have also in that interpretation a political objective. Because, as I said, that level of destruction is unprecedented. A couple more details here just to show you where these places are located. So all of these camps are in the northern West Bank, right? We have 56 Palestinians killed. That is as of late May. 3 refugee camps, Jenin, Nur Shams, Tulkarm, are devastated. We've also seen almost 50 airstrikes during that operation, 15 inside camps, and 41,000 Palestinians remain displaced from these camps. Also, UNRWA's installations in these camps, these are 10 schools, 3 health centers, the garbage collection, all of that remains suspended. When it comes to Farah camp, we have seen a return. Sorry, up there. When it comes to Farah camp, on the left-hand side, we see, sorry, on the right-hand side, we have seen a return of the IDPs to that camp in late February, but the other 3 camps remain completely empty. Now, there's always a bit of a difference in our statistics between the registered refugees who had been living in those camps as of before the war and the current population. So we've already seen some displacement in the period since the beginning of the war before the operation started. Hence, when you add up these figures down there, you get to a higher number of refugees, whereas the current, number of displaced people since late January stands at 40,000. This gives you a bit of an idea on where IDPs have moved. Most of them have remained in the area of Jenin and Tulkarm. The bulk of them staying with families or renting, and a small percentage, particularly in Jenin, lives currently in public shelters. What is very concerning is the protection aspect of what we see. First of all, this has been a very heavily militarized operation. And we say militarized as opposed to military because the legal framework applicable in the West Bank is that of international human rights law. Of course, the West Bank overall, as a state of occupation, is governed by IHL, but the use of force in the West Bank is governed by much stricter rules, internationally speaking, and that is international human rights law. The reason being is that the level of hostilities in the West Bank, according to the ICRC and the United Nations, has not reached the level of a non-international armed conflict. Hence, the rules governing force applicable to Israel's security forces are much stricter than they would be in an armed conflict. What is also concerning is that we have seen a lot of tactics, techniques, and procedures being imported from the Gaza Strip. That is very concerning. We've seen it in the level of force applied. We've seen it in the movement of troops on the ground, and we've also seen it in the way civilians are being dealt with. What appears to be the intent here, from what we see on the ground, is to render those camps increasingly uninhabitable places. That is perhaps just a summary, but just to underline here that clearly there is an element of collective punishment here. The military necessity of the level of destruction we're seeing in those camps, where no fighting clashes have taken place since literally mid-February, is something that is extremely concerning. And the destruction of those camps is continuing. We've also had a number of incidents impacting our installations. As I said, the services we currently provide in those camps are suspended. Israeli military is present there. There's no access for anybody to those camps. And we have had to switch to alternative modalities of providing healthcare, education, so on and so forth. A number of our facilities in those camps have been entered by the Israeli military in violation of privileges and immunities. That includes health centers and schools. And we now have received late last week information that still needs to be corroborated that at least 2 facilities are currently used as military bases. One is a school in Jenin camp, an UNRWA school, and a second one is the health center in Tulkarm camp. But that needs to be further verified, and we're working on this. Just a quick update on the response. I don't want to go into all the details, but we have been focusing on 3 things. One is, of course, to collect and track the movements of IDPs, gather the data, assess the needs, and provide that information to other humanitarian partners in the UN and outside the UN to help those IDPs. Secondly, we've been able to pivot our health services. We've opened now 11 alternative health facilities covering the IDPs in the north, and we also resumed an emergency education program so that these 4,600 kids that are impacted do have access to education. I will leave it at that, and would be very happy to take any questions. Over back to you, Eretz. Thank you.
Thank you, Roland, and so much to discuss, but both the general overview of conditions on the ground and current operations and their capacities was very helpful. And your perspective coming out of these last weeks, months, years. And with that, I'll pass it to you, Kamal. Following from what Roland said, we'd be very, very glad, of course, to hear from you as a resident of Nur Shams and of the communities directly impacted. Could you please, of course, first begin by telling us about yourself? Who are you? What is your name? Where are you from? And where is your family from? We would love to learn more.
I am Kamal Yousef. I'm from Tulkarm, specifically Nur Shams camp. I'm a Palestinian refugee and activist. My family originally from Jaffa, which is called right now Tel Aviv.
Thank you. And thanks again for joining us. Can you share anything more with us about your family? How did the family arrive to Nur Shams? And maybe just a little bit more generally about the history of Nur Shams, and what being a Palestinian refugee means to you as part of your identity, history, community, past, present. Also, Nur Shams, am I right? It was founded in 1952? I'm sure Roland might know.
Yeah.
So we'd love to hear more.
Yeah. Nur Shams camp was established after the Nakba 1948. 1952, Nur Shams camp was established. Being a refugee, specifically in Nur Shams camp, I was born at Nur Shams camp. I grew up hearing stories from my parents about how our grandparents were forced to leave their lands and homes from 48, and how they keep the keys and some memories from their old homes, their old houses, and how they were also convincing themselves that it's just 1 week, then they're gonna return to their lands. So that was they were refusing building houses in Nur Shams camp, and they were just waiting for just like a time to just come back to their lands.
So refusing to build houses because they were afraid that something more permanent would mean that they couldn't return to their original homes, right?
Yeah, they were convincing themselves that it's just 1 week, then they're gonna come back. Then it lasts for this moment.
And has Nur Shams changed very much from when you were a child to now? How have you seen the community develop and conditions develop in the last years, or in your own experience?
Actually, because they are all refugees, around 15,000 people. It's not like a camp. It's not just like a camp. It's like a huge family. People taking care of each other. People sharing the pain, sharing the happiness, sharing the sadness. Like they have a deep connections. Like I grew up at Nur Shams camp. Like my friends, my community, the neighbors. It's like a huge family. This is how the community in Nur Shams camp.
Incredible. I look forward also beyond today to learning more and more about the incredible community that I'm sure exists. I've never had the privilege yet to go myself, and I'm sure many of us would love the opportunity at one point or another. Um, and I think following from what you're saying, given the community, the family that exists there, given the reality on the ground, it's sometimes difficult, understandably, for all of us around the world who have not experienced the reality on the ground ourselves to really understand what's happening in the West Bank for many decades now, in recent years, in the last months, hours,
Yeah,
weeks, minutes. Could you share more about that, about what the reality is in Nur Shams, what the reality of occupation means for the residents of Nur Shams?
yeah, definitely for people outside, it's very hard for them to know what is the daily life here in Tulkarm, specifically in Nur Shams camp. But I want to tell you that the raids began before the 7th of October. It begins of May 2023. Uh, children here grow up hearing sound of gunfire. During these raids, parents living with the anxiety about their sons, it could be like they could be arrested, injured, killed anytime. Let me tell you about the raids before this military operation. The raids before, like they were completely different, but still violence. The violence was escalated. The first time it escalated at the 7th of October, and the second time this military operation, which is Iron Wall. But during the raids before, people here, as I told you, it's like a family. So they have a Telegram groups. They always sharing about the movements of army. So people used to just keep watching the news, the local news about the army is getting prepared next to the gate to raid the camp. So with that short time, all the families mostly they were just collecting their stuff and just want to leave the camp because they are afraid to lose their sons, their relatives, their selves. They are just afraid, and some family where couldn't leaving the camp before they raid. So sometimes they are raiding, finding people on the streets, just target them easily, injure them, kill them. And the people who stuck in the camp during these raids, they were spending nights without electricity, without food, without water. They just spending these nights with fear, just hearing soldiers around the house with their vehicles, with their dozers, with the drones, if like flying over them anytime they can drop a bomb, just destroy their house. Or sometimes also they were destroying the houses with dozers while the people inside. So, and also many families who were stuck in the camp, they lose their friends, they lose their relatives, they lose their sons, and it happened also in a neighborhood in Nur Shams camp, which is called Al Maslah. The father, a son of a man, was shot. He was bleeding on the street, and they were blocking the ambulance. And the father had no choice. He just wanted to help his son. When he went to him, he was trying to help him. He got also shot, and they were both were martyred. Sadly, I'm telling you, the raids before was like has a violence, but not the same as this military operation. They were just destroying the streets, destroying water system. They just want people to suffer as much as they can.
Thank you, Kamal. And I know these are difficult things to speak about. I want to start by,
Sorry, I can't hear you.
oh, can you hear me now?
No, just give me 1 minute.
Understandable given the circumstances. Um, we'll give Kamal one moment to find connection. Thank you all.
Yeah.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, I do now. Yeah.
Gorgeous. I wanted to say thank you for sharing. And of course, these are difficult and painful realities to speak about, but so important for all of us around the world to have access to your voice, to hear from you, um, how the reality on the ground looks and what the community means to you. I wanted to start by saying that it's incredible to hear about the system and networks of support that exist in the community and in Nur Shams, the way that people care for each other, the way that people have developed structures of communication and safety and collective care to protect each other as best as can be done in the conditions of military occupation. There's something deeply powerful there that I think is important too for people to see and learn from. Um, and I guess to the other pieces you shared around the violence that's existed for many, many years, long before October 2023, and continuing and escalating to today, I wanted to ask
Mhm.
if you want to share, and I understand if you don't, also personally, how did you experience the last ones? Where are you talking with us from now? What did you personally experience in a basic sense, without every detail, of course, since
Of course.
January? Where were
Yeah, of
you
course.
when the operation began, for example? There's just so much that many of us don't understand and don't have access to.
Yeah, this Iron Wall operation began 3 months and a half almost. It began with bombing a car with a helicopter or a drone. We still don't know. They just made an airstrike. They bombed the car, and actually, I was witness about everything happening that day. I immediately went there. You know, sometimes it could be your friends, something like that. So I immediately went there even before the ambulance came. I have witnessed seeing dead bodies burning and the fire eating them, and no one can do anything. People actually were scared to come closer, so may they could just target them again. This is was the beginning of this military operation. Then after they raided the whole city, immediately they came with their vehicles, raided the whole city. Not only the two camps, they raided the whole city and they start targeting people on the streets. And so many people were killed, like in the city, not even in the camps. So that was the beginning. Then it start escalating. They raided Tulkarm camp first. Then after they moved to Nur Shams camp with dozer, with drones, with everything. They start the same as the raid before, but with more violence, destroying the streets, destroying the houses, destroying the water system, cut the electricity, and the thing that happened with this military operation, that displacing people for us was something new. After some days, they start displacing people of their houses, uh, like with like for nowhere. Like people just became homeless, and they after they announced about the demolishing houses in both camps, they started in both camps demolishing houses. They announced before, then they give like a short time, 1 hour, 2 hour, just to let you get your stuff out. And my house was demolished the same. They gave us 2 hours. I went inside the camp. I was trying to collect some stuff. I just got my grandparents' papers and my family papers, which is approve our land in 48. When I when I was trying to collect the as much as I can from the stuff in that house, they said you have only 5 minutes. Then we're gonna start shoot. Uh, yeah, they wasn't even honest with the time they gave. They gave 2 hours, then they told us that it's only 5 minutes. Actually, me and the people there didn't care. They thought they just threatening us, but it was real. After that, these 5 minutes, they start shooting and throw sound grenades and stun grenades. Uh, I had to leave as soon as possible. While I'm leaving, I was holding the bag, has all the papers inside, and I passed 3 checkpoints. They were checking the bag and pointing the gun on my head. They are thinking that I'm carrying some like dangerous stuff or something. Uh, after that, they kept like day by day just announce like that and destroying the houses with dozers. And also, I would say they were also kidnapping people from the city and around. They were just kidnapping the people and put them inside the camp. The camp is not the camp anymore. It's like a prison. They are kidnapping people and put them inside the camp and torture them, checking their phones, forcing them to insult themselves, threatening them with rape, uh, just threatening with anything they could do. And some people were just have broken arms, broken legs, marks on their faces, and some of them just disappeared, arrested. We don't know where are them. About the displaced people now around the city, in villages around the city, and displaced people, even despite all that, still they didn't get rid of their violence. They are coming to displaced people houses. They keep checking them, destroying everything inside, keep stealing stuff, stealing their money, sometimes throwing their car keys, throwing their IDs, just just want them to suffer. And sometimes also kidnapping them also to the camp. And despite all that, the people who are displaced and they are announced for demolishing their houses. I'm living in a village called Iktaba. There is a mountain, like a hill. You can watch the camp. Down there, you can watch your house while being demolished. So while we are going there, they are just sending a drones and sometimes soldiers coming on foot to just bother us. Sometimes they just the snipers keep shooting us while watching our houses while being destroyed. And sometimes they are bringing drones, start throwing a sound grenade. They just want us to leave. This is about the military operation last days. And actually, while I was in this meeting, I was muting. They were shooting, and the electricity cut, and alhamdulillah, it came back.
Alhamdulillah, and we're glad to continue being able to hear from you and hear the testimony and stories and the important perspective you're sharing. And it's unimaginable to consider what it really means to contend with the reality you're describing, and so powerful and important to hear about what's been happening, about the people who have been disappeared, jailed, killed, the homes demolished. These are so painful realities to engage with. And I know from what you said before that the community you're a part of and the structures of care and support and family structure and safety is helping people move through this as best they can, though no one should move through this. And I hope that in the smallest way, all of us can also be part of that larger structure of listening, support, care, solidarity as we try
Thank you so much.
to build a different reality. So I just wanted to say that. And you mentioned this hill where you can observe the camp and observe the demolition of your homes and the community. You shared a video with me like that, so I wanted to share this video that Kamal took observing the destruction of the camp. One moment.
Yeah.
hope you can see this. Can you see this, Kamal?
Yep, I do.
Wonderful. So here's Kamal, and you can tell us afterwards a little bit more about this moment and what was happening.
I'm here watching the camp. I'm watching the destruction live. The D9, the dozer, is destroying the houses that they announced for, and you can see now the video. It's the destruction actually live in front of my eyes right now. Here is the camp, and here is the UNRWA school, and they keep destroying houses, as you can see. Yeah.
Kindly, of course, you pointed out the UNRWA school and what you were seeing from you. Tell us more. What was happening? When were you filming that?
Actually, at that day, I went there to watch. I just opened my car's door. I found a lot of soldiers just pointing the gun on me, and they shot next to me. They were just telling me, "Stop, stop, don't move." And I was raising my hands before I recording this video. I was raising my hands. They came also to the journalists there. They start threatening them. Then one guy there, he said, I know what do you want? Your drone just fell there. Then they said, yes, we are looking for the drone. Then they took their drone and start checking if the SD is still inside. Then they withdraw. This is what happened before I recorded this video. And I was watching the D10, the big dozer was destroying the houses, and so many people also were watching that, and I have seen people crying, seeing their memories, their houses just turning to dust.
Thank you for sharing, and yeah, difficult to contend with. And I'm sure it makes all of us more and more determined to work towards a different future, where people's homes are protected, people's lives, communities can grow freely. I wanted to share also some photos that you sent, and maybe you can say just a word or two about a few of them. There's too many to spend too much time on, but they're really gorgeous, stunning photos. And I thought they could also help, like your words in the video we just saw, to give color and texture to what's happening. Can you see the picture?
No.
Let me try again.
Kamal, these are from my collection, so if you want me to jump in at any time, Kamal, let me know. Sorry.
Thank you. We will.
This is my fiance Elle. She also witnessed so many stuff here. She was here, and she have seen so many things happening, the violence and the destruction happening in front of her eyes. So also she can talk about it.
Hi, Elle, welcome. And can you see the picture now?
Yes, I see it.
So what was this scene, if both of you want to share?
This is actually the camp before Iron Wall, so one of their raids from before Iron Wall. Kamal can continue if he wants.
Anything to add, Kamal?
Actually, it's so small for me. Yeah. It's one of the 100 houses that been destroyed. We used to go inside the camps after every raid, just document the destruction and what they did. Actually, there is hundreds of these pictures, and I had also thousands of pictures for this stuff. But sometimes you have to delete them because you are passing checkpoint, and if they check your phone and saw some pictures like that, they would just arrest you and start beating you up.
Yeah, of course. But so
Yeah.
important. And it's an important part of, I think, the perseverance and steadfastness that you and the people of Nur Shams and Palestinians displayed to document, to preserve the memory, the artifacts, to show the world. So thank you. And so also something very powerful about you going deliberately each time to document, to show, so that we can see it now and that people around the world can have bear witness and work towards justice. Who is this young person?
This is Saddam. Kamal, can you see him?
Yeah. Actually, this kid in a village called
That's
Kusra,
Saddam.
they are also suffering of settlers and army attacks on their village. They always raid their village, start burning houses and destroy like stuff in their houses, steal some stuff, and sometimes shooting people. Settlers these days, like even underage, they have guns. They are allowed to shoot anyone they want. And
Yeah,
in
and I know
Kusra, they
that,
always do that.
yeah, here's a bulldozer destroying
Yeah,
infrastructure.
this is a D9 doing doing destruction in the city center of Tulkarm. It's not even related to the camps. And
Yeah,
also in my village here in Iktaba, one day they came and me and El also were documenting them. They were destroying the streets that not even belong to the camp. And I want to add something. It's not only like the destruction and the suffering because of streets or building or this stuff. No. Uh, sometimes sometimes they are going to the city, start destroying the stores, stopping, preventing people to continue their work. They also want to destroy the economy of Tulkarem, which is already destroyed.
right.
Like so many people lost their works because of that.
And Roland mentioned in his sharing the high level of unemployment that has existed for many years in the West Bank, generally in the camps. And as we can see from military policy throughout the West Bank and elsewhere, the stratagem is to make life unlivable to further a project of displacement and control. Um, so it's so important to see the scope and dimension of it. Who are these lovely people, if you want to share?
This is my sister, and this is Zena, who was this little baby who was also displaced from the Nabi, an area close to Nur Shams camp.
Mhm. Well, we don't have time, unfortunately, to go through everything, but these are both beautiful and painful. And I really, really appreciate that.
Saddam took this photo. Saddam who saw earlier took this photo of almonds. But Saddam took that photo.
Beautiful. Very lastly, Kamal, I just wanted to ask you to share more about the work you've been doing. I know you've been partnering with an organization called Skateboarding Palestine in partnership with the Iktiba Council
Yeah.
to launch a series of programs for the displaced children of Nur Shams and Tulkarm, including skateboarding, English, photography classes. Can you tell us more about the project, what it means to you, and the work that you're doing?
Yeah, first I want to tell you about what we were doing before even this military operation. Uh, I was telling you, after every raid, we were going inside, document everything, seeing the destruction, and also we were also taking care of the kids and talking to them, see what their reaction about what they are living, and we were also distributing toys and some stuff to make them enjoy a little bit because of the trauma they are living. And the beginning of this year, we went inside Tulkarm camp and we recorded the visiting. We made interviews with some kids. They were just wishing the life to come back normal as before, and the streets come back normal, and the people they lost also come back alive, which is not possible. But even that was their reaction even before this military operation. And after this military operation, we were doing also some activities for kids like a Joy Day, and we also, me and Ella, were part of activity day here in Iktaba school. It was like all displaced kids, they were playing, enjoying with some clowns, some people who are organizing these activities. And me, actually, this plan came from El, my fiance, about the photography lessons. That was the main idea. We wanted to distribute like a simple cameras for kids so they can document their lives. They can take a picture. They can take a videos of, like of their life here, of the displacement life. And we also add to this idea that we can also like beside the photography lessons, we can also make skateboarding lessons, which is really gonna be good. They can enjoy skateboarding, something new for them, and they like it's not popular sport here in Palestine, so they can learn about so many stuff. And when we add the skateboarding lessons, we also added English lessons because some stuff in skateboarding, you like it's not exist in Arabic language. You need to say it in English. And they're gonna learn so much through these lessons. So we made an activities for displaced kids here, with collaboration with the Skate.ps and the Skateball and with the Council of Iktaba, about photography lessons and the skateboarding lessons and English lessons with some internationals.
Well, I'm excited to learn more about the skate scene in Palestine and in Nur Shams. Another time, we'll have to bring you and others back for a specific webinar featuring the incredible community that I'm sure exists, and finds joy and play in the conditions and
Thank
in
you
the
so much.
landscape that's created. And I just wanted to share once more my screen just so people can see a little bit more of the activities you're describing. Here was a post recently from the launch of the initiative, Skateboarding Palestine, announcing they're happy to say that they can begin giving weekly free skating classes in Iktaba for the displaced kids of Nur Shams and Tulkarm. And for me, it was incredible to see the videos and the images of the joy and freedom and of free movement and expression that you're giving this community and the children a chance to experience. Incredible.
Thank you so much for sharing these.
My great pleasure. Thank you. And with that, we're nearing the end of our time together, so we'll give just a few minutes for open conversation and question and answer. I'll begin with one that I saw from the audience during both of your sharings, and we can move from there. But several people I saw ask about the status of education for the children of the schools, the UNRWA schools, that are, as Roland mentioned, sometimes being used as military camps, or stations, sometimes destroyed. What is happening with the education for the children? Though I know it's entering the summer, perhaps school is out, but in the last month since January, if both of you, Kamal and Roland, from your perspectives, want to share about education in the camps and what's taking place for the people who cannot attend their normal schools.
I would say the education in the camps, especially in Tulkarm and the Nur Shams camp, completely stopped. Like they cannot access to the schools. And after this military operation, the whole education, the schools and the universities stopped for almost 2 months. Like kids, people are not going to the school, to the universities at all. Then recently, the government made a solution that the government's schools uh, can can let more kids join the refugee kids can join these schools, but the numbers are really huge, and like in a class 50 or 55 kids, which is a really huge number.
Thank you. Important to understand. Roland, anything to add?
Well, just perhaps to say that we, in late March, launched an emergency education program for Jenin, Tulkarm, and Nur Shams IDP kids, which consists of three elements. One is online teaching over a learning platform that we have. Two is an agreement, as Kamal said, with the PA schools to temporarily accommodate children. And three is in-person teaching by UNRWA, education personnel in available locations. So overall, the coverage at the minute is, and that's by the way, it's 2.5 days a week that we do this, both in Tulkarm and Jenin. It's Thursdays, Saturdays, and Wednesdays afternoon. So the overall coverage through these three work streams is roughly 90%. But of course, it's not the same. It's not the same as kids being in a safe space, being with their friends in the schools that they're used to. It's also a compressed curriculum. And it's very important to keep in mind that already, particularly in Jenin, but also Nur Shams Tulkarm, we've had already through the previous scholastic year, between 25 and 30% of the school days lost. So that has already not been a normal environment for kids. And the rates that Kamal referred to earlier, a day, half a day, 2 days, 3 days, they came literally every 2 weeks in all three camps. So kids are stressed. Myself, I was caught up in 2 of those rates. It's not a nice situation, and it clearly is not an environment conducive to learning for children, even before the large-scale displacement that we've seen now. So it's not a good situation. We do what we can, but it's no means in any form or shape a normal learning environment.
Thanks, Roland, and deep gratitude. And thanks to all of you at UNRWA continuing to do this work and provide infrastructure and services as best as can be done, despite the hurdles the government of Israel and the conditions, of course, put on the circumstance. And of course, full respect to the communities themselves, the pupils and families and parents who pursue their education as best they can, despite the circumstance. I wanted to ask quickly if both of you have any last general thoughts you want to share, anything that you want to convey to the people here and that you think is particularly important for people around the world to understand that is maybe sometimes missed about the context and how it should be related to and how we could work towards a different reality on the ground and a just future. Kamal, do you have any last words to share?
I would say I hope the news is not the same as the reality. I wish that internationals come more and more and see and be a witness for the violence that's happening here, because Israel always fake fake news on they fake the news on social media. So I wish more internationals come to see and document everything and do solidarity work. And it's okay if you can't, but at least try to stop your governments that supporting and influencing the genocide. This is all I wish.
Thank you. And yes, we're so honored to join today to bear witness and to have the insights you bring motivate us to create the types of grassroots and diplomatic intervention that are needed to put an end to the violence and an end to the occupation. Roland, any last thoughts on your end and last sentiments you wish to share?
Well, perhaps just because I saw some of the questions in the chat, if you have 2 minutes, maybe some quick answers. Compensation for demolished houses, no. This is justified by military necessity, so there's no compensation. PA response, the Palestinian Authority is doing what it can, but it has severe financing issues. UNRWA is also facing major funding shortfalls, and we hope to be able to continue to pay our staff going forward. But it might as well be that our financial resources currently do not last longer than July. That is a major problem. It will impact the agency everywhere. In terms of the IDPs, as I said, the bulk of IDPs, as Kamal also said, live very close to the camps with families renting, and in Jenin, a small number also, in public shelter. Extension to other camps, that is what everybody's concerned about. Personally, I'm not so sure that we would see the same replay. But clearly what is happening in the West Bank now is part of an overall approach, a political approach that is associated with, I can say that here, the right-wing agenda of the current government. Clearly what we're seeing in these three camps is forcible displacement. It's a grave violation of the Geneva Conventions. There's no doubt about it. It's a silent war. What is happening in Gaza is so horrible that it often overshadows the situation in the West Bank. But what we're seeing there, demolition, changing realities on the ground, now new decisions by the government to further allow the registration of Palestinian land in Area C under the Israeli occupation authorities. These are all steps that will, if implemented, fundamentally alter the geographic reality of the situation in the West Bank and make a two-state solution even more difficult to implement. What I would say, though, is that international legal work and a lot of Israeli human rights organizations doing fantastic work in support of the rights of refugees on the ground is badly needed, Some of the petitions before the Supreme Court, even though they're rejected, they're still very, very important. And UNRWA, of course, as a UN agency, is not involved in that, but just to say there are lots of very brave and courageous Israeli organizations that are doing fantastic work, who are also, by the way, increasingly being targeted, as you will have heard. So, yeah, I mean, one can only hope that the war in Gaza ends as quickly as possible and that some rationality returns. But we see the West Bank's situation changing on the ground on a daily basis and possibly in an irreversible manner. It's something we should all be concerned about. Thank you.
Thanks to you. And thanks to you both, Roland and Kamal, for giving us these insights into the scope of what's taking place, the level of violence, the severity of the destruction of infrastructure and damage to communal life that's taking place, and also the incredible and commendable work being done by UNRWA and, of course, by community residents in their steadfastness to occupation. And like you said, Roland and Kamal, may this in some small way empower us with the information we need to work in all of our different contexts and as part of global movements of justice and solidarity to end the ongoing project of displacement taking place currently in Gaza and the West Bank, and to create a future where there is self-determination for all and where the human rights of all are respected as universal and unimpeachable. So with that, unfortunately, we are all out of time. Thank you, Roland and Kamal. Truly, your time here is so appreciated, and we are honored to be with you today. And thanks also to each of you here on behalf of the Green Olive Collective for joining this event from around the world. As I mentioned at the start of our time here, your contributions for today's event will support English photography and skateboarding classes for children currently displaced from Nur Shams and Tulkarm and impacted by recent military operations in the West Bank. They will also support community efforts to replant olive orchards and after settler attacks and rebuild homes in Masafiliata. You can contribute through the Green Olive Fund at giftjustice.com, which I just put into the chat moments ago. Your contribution, solidarity, and mutual aid will allow us to continue supporting communities facing displacement in Area C to sustain a robust infrastructure of solidarity, advocacy, and action in the coming year to launch new international campaigns in direct support of communities facing land expropriation and settler violence in the occupied West Bank. And you are also, of course, invited to join us on the ground. As Kamal said, people are always welcome to join activities and advocacy efforts with the communities in direct partnership, and to meet with incredible human rights defenders on the ground like Kamal and community advocates, giving voice to their experiences and the experiences of their communities. So you can find more information about our upcoming solidarity missions with the Green Olive Collective on our website, which I'll also share momentarily. And you are all finally invited to join the Green Olive Solidarity Network. As we've discussed, in this time of ongoing anguish, it's often difficult to know what we can do to express our solidarity and tangibly support Palestinians facing displacement, mass eviction, and unprecedented state violence. That's why we launched an advocacy and mutual aid network that allows people around the world to maintain direct and sustained contact with Palestinians living under military rule and directly support on-the-ground activism in the West Bank. Join the network to work in direct partnership with Palestinian communities doing incredible work and with wonderful community members like Kamal. I've sent the link in the chat. And with that, thank you all, and thanks, Roland and Kamal. Roland,
Maybe I can make one kind of, so Mary wrote in the chat whether UNRWA has launched an emergency appeal for the Northern West Bank. I've posted a document now, which is supplementary appeal to an existence appeal of those of you who are interested to have a bit more detailed information on the needs there. I just put it in there as well. Thanks for the reminder, Mary.
Thanks, Roland. And if there's any other resources you think are useful, I can attach them in a follow-up email tomorrow. I'll send a recording of the webinar and can include a link or two to that and other resources. That's deeply appreciated. Thank you. Wonderful. All right. Have wonderful and peaceful days, everyone. We look forward to seeing you at upcoming events, and sincere thanks to everyone, and Roland and Kamal. Have good days. We hope to be in touch shortly.
Thank you very much indeed. Have a good rest of the day.
Thank you so much, everyone. I'm really honored to be here, part of this call. Thank you so much, Aris. Thank you, everyone, and good luck.
Inshallah, talk soon. Thank you, Kamal, and thanks to Ella as well.
Inshallah.
Bye all.